Welcome to Mystery Story, the place where shadows from the past refuse to fade, where every unanswered question lingers like a whisper across time. Tonight, we set sail into waters both real and haunted, tracing the ghostly wake of a ship. That should have been ordinary, but became one of the most enduring riddles of the sea. No cannon fire, no storm, no wreckage. A ship intact, provisions untouched, yet every soul aboard vanished into the void. This is not a legend, this is history. This is the mystery of the Mary Celeste. It was the 5th of November, 1872, when the Mary Celeste departed from Pier 50 in New York. The air was sharp with the bite of late autumn. The sky grey but calm, the sea itself deceptively gentle. Dock workers who helped load the barrels of denatured alcohol recalled how Captain Benjamin Briggs watched every detail with meticulous care. Briggs was not just another captain. He was a man of stern reputation, quiet, deeply religious, uncompromising in both duty and morality. At 37 years old, he was a veteran mariner, the kind of man whose presence on deck inspired both respect and restraint. This voyage was unusual, not because of its destination, but because Briggs brought his family along. His wife, Sarah, described, in letters as warm and soft-spoken, had agreed to sail despite her concerns. Their daughter, Sophia, only 2 years old, toddled along the deck as the crew loaded cargo. To see a child on such a voyage was rare, and it lent the Mary Celeste an air of domesticity that contrasted starkly with the cold efficiency of maritime commerce. The crew of 7 had been hand-picked. First mate Albert Richardson, disciplined and reliable. Second mate Andrew Gilling, younger, with a reputation for skill but also for vanity. Cook and steward Edward Head, responsible for provisions. The rest were seasoned sailors, men who had weathered storms, crossed oceans, and whose names would soon be etched forever into the annals of mystery. The ship herself carried an aura. Built in 1861 as the Amazon, she had earned a reputation as cursed. Her first captain had died mysteriously during her maiden voyage. She collided with another vessel in the English Channel. She ran aground in a storm off Nova Scotia. Over a decade of bad luck clung to her timbers. Sailors are a superstitious breed, and whispers of a ship touched by ill fate followed her from port to port. Yet on that November morning she seemed steady, sails trimmed, her cargo secure. Before departure, Captain Briggs wrote to his mother. His words were hauntingly mundane, yet chilling in hindsight. "Our vessel is in beautiful trim, and I hope we shall have a fine passage." He had no reason to suspect that these words would be among the last ever heard from him. As Mary Celeste slipped out into the Atlantic, the harbor faded behind. The horizon stretched endlessly before them, waves, breaking like shards of glass under the pale sun, gulls crying above as if marking a farewell. To the world, this was just another transatlantic voyage. To the 10 souls aboard, it was a journey of hope, duty, and faith. But history would record it differently. For within less than a month, another ship would find the Mary Celeste adrift, in the open ocean. Her sails partly torn, her cargo untouched, her logbook strangely halted. Plates still on the table, the captain's cabin neat, the child's toys still present. And yet not a single person remained. What could erase an entire crew and family without leaving behind even a whisper of struggle? What fate stalked this vessel from the moment she left New York Harbor? The answers, if they exist at all, remain locked beneath the silence of the sea. And so begins the story of the Mary Celeste. Not a legend conjured by sailors' imaginations, but a documented event that continues to puzzle scholars, investigators, and storytellers nearly 150 years later. It was the morning of December 4th, 1872. The merchant brigantine Dei Gratia, captained by David Morehouse, was several hundred miles west of Portugal, nearing the Azores. The sea was restless, the wind steady, when a lookout spotted a vessel on the horizon. She lurched awkwardly, her sails set strangely, as though guided by a careless hand. At first, Morehouse assumed it was another merchantman bound for Europe. But as the two ships drew closer, unease set in. Something about the vessel's motion was wrong. Her sails partly torn, her movement erratic, like a drunk staggering through the waves. Through his spyglass, Morehouse read her name painted on. Astern, Mary Celeste. A chill ran through him. Morehouse knew Captain Briggs personally. Just weeks earlier, they had dined together in New York. The Mary Celeste had departed only 8 days before his own ship. Yet here she was, drifting, deserted. Morehouse ordered a boarding party. First mate Oliver DeVoe and second mate John. Wright rowed across the grey waves, their small boat rising and falling against the swells. As they approached the Mary Celeste, silence pressed in. No voices, no movement, no watchman at the rail. Only the groan of timbers and the snap of loose rigging. Climbing the rope ladder, DeVoe was the first to step onto her deck. His boots echoed against the wood. The sails were ragged, some sheets hanging loose. The wheel turned slightly with the swell unmanned. There were no signs of violence, no blood, no broken planks, no musket fire. Yet there was an eerie emptiness, as though the ship herself held her breath. The boarding party fanned out. DeVoe headed for the cabins. What he found would haunt him for the rest of his days. In the captain's quarters, belongings were neatly arranged. A sewing machine still held a half-stitched garment. A child's doll lay on the bed. The bedding was dry, undisturbed. The logbook sat on the desk. The last entry dated November 25th, 1872, 9 days earlier. It described routine sailing conditions, nothing unusual. Then, silence. In the galley, DeVoe found provisions intact. There was food for 6 months, barrels of fresh water untouched. Plates and cutlery remained in the mess hall, as if meals had been interrupted and never resumed. The cargo hold was full, 701 barrels accounted for, though later inspection would reveal 9 of them empty, their contents evaporated. But most unnerving of all, the lifeboat was gone. The ropes that had secured it hung loose, cut or untied, in haste. It was as if the crew had abandoned ship deliberately, but why? The Mary Celeste was seaworthy. She was not sinking. Her hull was intact. She could have sailed on for years. The men searched for clues of struggle, blood, weapons, signs of mutiny. They found none. They searched for journals, letters, personal notes, nothing beyond the captain's log ending abruptly. The ship was clean, orderly, almost too orderly. DeVoe would later write in his report, "The ship was deserted. The state of her rigging and sails showed she had been left in a hurry." The condition of the cabins was most mysterious. It was as if people had vanished in the midst of their daily business. When the boarding party returned to the Dei Gratia, the crew whispered among themselves. Superstitions ran rampant. To step aboard a ghost ship was to court bad luck, some believed. Others muttered of curses, of omens. Captain Morehouse made the decision. They would sail the Mary Celeste themselves, a skeleton crew guiding her into Gibraltar for salvage. It was dangerous towing a mystery across stormy seas, but it was also valuable. The salvage rights could make men rich. So the Mary Celeste sailed again, crewed by strangers, while the ocean kept her secrets. But every man aboard felt it, the weight of unseen eyes, the echo of lives cut short or carried off into the unknown. For the world, the Mary Celeste had now transformed. She was no longer just a brigantine carrying cargo across the Atlantic. She had become a ghost, an omen, an unsolved question adrift upon the sea. When the Mary Celeste was brought into Gibraltar on December 12, 1872, the harbor buzzed with rumor before the ship had even docked. A vessel found adrift, crew vanished, cargo untouched. It was the kind of story sailors carried from tavern to tavern, each retelling adding more dread. By the time the Mary Celeste reached shore, she was already infamous. The British Vice Admiralty Court immediately opened an inquiry, as was standard for salvage cases. But this was no ordinary hearing. Presiding was Frederick Solly Flood, the Attorney General of Gibraltar, a man notorious for his suspicious nature and flair for drama. To him, the Mary Celeste was not merely a salvage prize, it was a crime scene. The salvagers from the Dei Gratia were called to testify. Captain Morehouse swore he had last seen Briggs and his family in New York, healthy and prepared for their voyage. His men described the eerie condition of the ship, the missing lifeboat, the last log entry, the untouched cargo. Yet their very testimony raised questions. Could the crew of the Dei Gratia themselves be guilty of foul play? Had they murdered Briggs and stolen the ship, concocting a tale of abandonment to cover their crime? Solly Flood pressed this theory aggressively. He examined the Mary Celeste in person, searching for evidence. He claimed to find suspicious marks on her bow, suggesting collision or violence. He insisted that the cargo might have been tampered with. He even hinted that Morehouse and Briggs had colluded to commit fraud, though no proof of this ever surfaced. The hearing dragged on, with whispers spreading in the dockside taverns of Gibraltar. Some sailors believed mutiny had erupted aboard the Mary Celeste, that Briggs's crew had risen against him, perhaps murdering the captain and his family, then perishing themselves in the aftermath. Others believed pirates had attacked, though there was no sign of plunder. One of the strangest details emerged from the cargo hold. 9 barrels of alcohol had leaked or evaporated, leaving their staves warped. Could fumes from the alcohol have frightened the crew into abandoning ship, fearing an explosion? Solly Flood entertained the theory, but it did not explain why they left so suddenly, or why they did not return when the danger passed. Meanwhile, Briggs's reputation became central to the inquiry. Friends and family described him as devout, principled, incapable of recklessness. He was not the kind of man to abandon his ship lightly. His decision, whatever it was, had to be born of sheer desperation. Yet desperation from what? The sea itself? The cargo? His own crew? The more the court examined the evidence, the less sense it made. The logbook ended abruptly. The ship was sound. There was no evidence of storm damage, no trace of violence, no clear reason for flight. It was a riddle that deepened the longer one stared at it. In the end, the Admiralty Court awarded salvage rights to the Dei Gratia, but only 1/5 the ship's value, far less than expected. It was as if the court itself was punishing the salvagers for a crime it could not prove. Solly Flood remained convinced of foul play until his dying day, though history would judge him a man more eager for scandal than truth. As the Mary Celeste lay moored in Gibraltar, the world's press seized upon the story. Newspapers across Europe and America printed sensational headlines: "Ghost ship found in the Atlantic." The details became exaggerated with every telling: food still warm on the table, the captain's tea still steaming, the crew vanished into thin air. The legend grew even as the facts stood stubbornly still. By the time the inquiry ended, one truth had emerged above all others. Nobody knew what had happened aboard the Mary Celeste, and perhaps nobody ever would. The mystery of the Mary Celeste has endured for more than a century, not because of what was found, but because of what was not. No bodies, no blood, no final message, only silence. And from that silence rose theories, some chillingly plausible, others drifting into the realm of the fantastic. Each one attempts to answer the same question: what could drive 10 souls to abandon a seaworthy vessel in the middle of the Atlantic? Piracy on the high seas. The first theory that emerged was the simplest: pirates. The late 19th century still had its share of marauders, particularly in the waters around the Azores. But piracy leaves a trail: looted cargo, violence, signs of struggle. On the Mary Celeste, nothing was missing. The cargo of alcohol worth thousands of dollars remained untouched. Personal valuables too: jewelry, clothing, even navigational equipment were left behind. Pirates rarely rob without leaving scars. Here the ship bore none. If pirates came, they left empty-handed, and that makes no sense. Mutiny and murder, another theory, points inward. Mutiny. Perhaps the crew rose against Captain Briggs. Maybe they resented his authority or the presence of his family. Briggs was a strict man, and discipline at sea was often harsh. But again, there were no signs of violence, no bloodstains scrubbed hastily, no broken weapons. If the crew killed Briggs, where did they go? Why abandon a perfectly good ship only to vanish themselves? The mutiny theory collapses under its own weight. The alcohol fumes. Hypothesis. This is one of the most compelling scientific theories. 9 barrels of alcohol were found empty, their staves warped. Could they have leaked, filling the hold with explosive fumes? A single spark could have turned the Mary Celeste into a floating bomb. Imagine Briggs descending into the hold, catching the sharp tang of alcohol vapor, realizing the danger. Panic sets in. Perhaps he ordered everyone into the lifeboat temporarily, tethered by a rope to wait until the air cleared. A sudden squall, a snapped line. The lifeboat drifts away, leaving the Mary Celeste to sail on alone. It's a chillingly plausible idea. Yet questions remain. Why would Briggs abandon ship without taking supplies, charts, or his sextant? A seasoned captain would never risk survival at sea with so little, unless, in that moment, fear clouded even the sharpest judgment. Rogue. Waves or waterspouts, the Atlantic is no stranger to freak phenomena. A rogue wave, a towering wall of water rising from nowhere, could have swept across the deck, terrifying the crew. A waterspout, descending like a twisting funnel from storm. Clouds might have drenched the ship in sudden chaos. Briggs, fearing imminent capsizing, could have ordered evacuation. Yet the Mary Celeste showed no structural damage, no evidence of being battered by such a force. The sails were torn, yes, but not in a way consistent with catastrophe. Seismic or magnetic phenomena. Some researchers point to natural forces we still do not fully understand. Could an undersea earthquake have shaken the vessel, convincing the crew the ship was doomed? Could sudden magnetic anomalies have interfered with navigation, driving Briggs to madness or confusion? These explanations intrigue but remain speculative, with little concrete evidence to support them. The human factor, illness, madness, or desperation, life at sea was harsh and human minds fragile. Some suggest that the crew fell ill, perhaps, poisoned by contaminated food. Delirium could have driven them overboard one by one until none remained. Others whisper of madness, collective hysteria gripping the ship, Briggs himself succumbing to paranoia. But the careful order left behind, the neatly stowed belongings, the intact logbook, speaks against chaos. If madness came, it wore a calm and quiet mask. The supernatural theories, and then there are the theories that defy reason but refuse to die. Some claim the Mary Celeste was swallowed by the same forces that haunt the Bermuda Triangle, though her course never touched it. Others whisper of alien abduction, an entire crew plucked from the deck, leaving ship and cargo untouched. Sailors of the time spoke of sea monsters, great tentacled beasts rising from the deep. In the absence of truth, imagination rushes in. The most likely answer among all these, the alcohol vapor theory, remains the most convincing. A sudden leak, the fear of explosion, a hasty evacuation into the lifeboat. The rope tether snaps and the ship sails on, empty. It is not dramatic, not supernatural, but sometimes the cruelest mysteries are born of simple mistakes and human fear. And yet, one detail lingers. Captain Briggs was no fool. Would he truly abandon his vessel without even grabbing his sextant, without ensuring provisions? Would a man of his experience and calm judgment make such a rash choice? That doubt is what keeps the Mary Celeste alive in our imagination. Theories can circle forever, but the sea guards her silence. The story of the Mary Celeste does not end with the ship's discovery. After DeVoe's boarding in 1872, the vessel itself continued to sail under new captains for years, but the shadow of mystery clung to her like a curse. Sailors whispered that she was haunted, An unlucky vessel doomed by what had happened on that silent voyage. Indeed, her later history was littered with misfortune. Accidents, deaths, financial ruin. Finally, in 1885, the Mary Celeste was deliberately wrecked off the coast of Haiti in a failed insurance fraud. She lies there still, her timbers swallowed, by the sea, her name etched forever into the folklore of maritime mystery. But it was never just about the ship. It was about the people who vanished. Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife Sarah, their young daughter Sophia, and 7 experienced crewmen. 10 lives, erased without explanation. No trace of them was ever found. No letters, no bodies washed ashore. It was as if the ocean itself conspired to keep their fate hidden. The enduring power of the Mary Celeste lies in this silence. For every rational explanation, alcohol fumes, storms, human error, there remains a hole of uncertainty. For every comforting theory, a question unanswered. What drove them to step off solid timber into the fragile hope of a lifeboat? Did they watch their ship drift away, powerless to return? Did they perish quickly, or linger days at sea waiting for rescue that never came? There is a cruelty in mysteries without closure. And yet that very void is what captivates us. The Mary Celeste is not just a shipwreck tale. It is a mirror of human fear, decision, and the unforgiving vastness of the sea. It reminds us how fragile we are, how quickly security can dissolve into the unknown. To this day, when sailors cross the Atlantic, some claim the Mary Celeste still drifts through foggy dawns, a phantom ship with sails ragged, crewless decks, and a silence that chills the soul. The sea has claimed countless lives, but few stories linger like the Mary Celeste. Was it fear, was it fate, or something beyond our understanding? Perhaps we will never know, but one thing is certain: the mystery will never sink. Thank you for watching Mystery Story. If this tale left you wondering, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because the world is full of secrets waiting to be uncovered.